Trauma. Trauma is the lasting emotional response that results from living through a distressing event. When someone is inflicted with trauma, the one thing they want to do is forget. But often, they're forced to remember. And remembering can be painful. While film and television have attempted to depict the complexities of mental illness, they often fall short in creating an immersive experience that accurately represents the nuances of these disorders. As a viewer, we don't get to fully explore the character's emotions and story in their present moment, and this often results in a barrier that this allows the viewer to properly empathize with the characters that are seen, as well as disallowing them to understand the inner workings of mental illness and trauma. But despite these issues in media, through its use of interactive gameplay and emotional storytelling, these emotions are able to be felt and experienced in OMOCAT's indie game RPG, OMORI. Welcome to Whitespace. You have been living here as long as you can remember. The game follows our main protagonist, OMORI, where we start off in Whitespace, an empty room with nothing besides our sketchbook filled with questionable drawings, our laptop where we learned that everything was okay, a tissue box for wiping our sorrows away, a dark light bulb hanging from the ceiling, wherever that is, and our cat, Miwo. After running around for a couple of minutes, we find a knife. And after promptly arming ourselves, the mysterious door unlocks and we begin our adventure. Beyond the door, we're greeted by OMORI's friends, Kel, Aubrey, and Hiro. Kel being the childish and happy-go-lucky kid, Aubrey, the kind yet sensitive type, and Hiro, the older brother of Kel, who also acts as the big brother figure for the group, who often has to resolve the squabbles between Aubrey and Kel. After resolving an issue between the two, we make it to a playground where we are introduced to our last two characters of the group. Basil, a socially awkward artistic type who we learn loves gardening and photography, and Mari, OMORI's big sister, who also serves as the other guardian of the group by setting up picnics and helping the group out. Before continuing the game, we are prompted to take a look at Basil's photo album. It's here where we get to learn what this group of friends are really like. While looking through the photo album, I could only think about how joyful everyone looks in these photos. A normal group of kids, not unlike the friends that you may have grown up with. I found myself becoming attached to these characters and only wishing to continue following them through their adventures. After looking at the photo album, Basil invites us to his house to see the new sprouts he's planted. And after a brief scuffle with the playground bully, Boss, we make our way to Basil's house. On our way, Basil shows us his flower gardens, making connections to each of the characters. This is also where we get our first experience with the full combat system, utilizing emotions to gain certain advantages over your opponent. Hiro gives us an emotion chart for quick reference on what certain emotions do and which ones have advantages over the other. After making it to Basil's house, another scuffle between Aubrey and Kel causes some of Basil's photos to fall out of his album. And now it's our job to sort them back together. This gives the player another opportunity to look at Basil's photo album. One thing I really like about the game is how it softens the player up and causes them to let their guard down, which allows the player to relax and enjoy the story, which only causes shock when the game really starts. After sorting the dropped photos, Basil takes the album and another photo slips out. But this one is different, as it causes Basil significant distress. We're back in Whitespace, with no way out, although there is always one. But the player menu gives us a new option, stab. With no other option, we're forced to turn our weapon on ourselves. The player learns that this isn't OMORI's story. The story follows Sunny, a quiet, secluded boy. This isn't like the fun adventure that we had in Headspace. This is real life, and, well, everything isn't the same as it once was. The original group of friends from Headspace don't hang out anymore in real life. Hiro has left for college. Aubrey and Cal have found new friends. Sunny hasn't left his house in over 4 years. And Mari is gone. She committed suicide, and the rest of the group are all coping with her suicide in their own way. In the real-world sections of Omori, the player learns more about the group as Sunny begins to rekindle the friendships that he lost when he locked himself away. Slowly uncovering the truth behind Headspace, the trauma that Sunny carries, and the truth behind Mari's death. Back in Headspace, Basil has gone missing, and Omori and his friends set out to find him. The rest of the story in Headspace, from here on, will solely be about finding Basil, traversing through many different areas before venturing to the deepest parts of Headspace and Sunny's mind, coming closer to the truth behind something. A black figure with one eye that haunts Sunny. A figure that represents Sunny's fears, grief, and guilt for a secret that even he can't remember. In the game, Sunny has to deal with the death of his sister, but we see something greater here. Something else that Sunny feels an overwhelming amount of guilt for. As the game progresses, we see more than just grief. By further interpreting the events that occur within Headspace and reminiscing of the past from our friends in the real world, it is made evident that something bigger happened to Sunny. An event so traumatizing that it would scar him for years, leaving me to believe that Sunny suffers from a form of... Before I talk about the evidence, I must add that despite the numerous amount of research I've done, I am not a licensed clinician. And even though I have spoken to a clinical counselor and have consulted multiple psychological handbooks, my words should not be taken as that as a trained professional, nor should any of the material that I've referenced be used in place of a psychologist. In this section, I'm going to discuss how Sunny fits the criteria for a possible diagnosis of PTSD as outlined by the DSM-5. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders 5th edition, more commonly known as the DSM-5, is the handbook that many mental health professionals use to classify mental illness and other disorders. According to the manual, the diagnostic criteria for PTSD states that the individual must have had exposure to the traumatic event, exhibit the presence of one or more intrusion symptoms, such as intense or prolonged psychological distress at exposure to internal or external cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the traumatic events. They must exhibit persistent avoidance of stimuli associated with the traumatic event, and they must experience negative alterations in their cognitions and moods. Throughout the game, the player is shown many examples that demonstrate how Sunny can fit into most of the criterion for post-traumatic stress. One of the biggest examples in the game is the reoccurring presence of something, a constant reminder to Sunny about his traumatic experiences, covering the first subsection of Criteria B. Criterion C is shown throughout the game, as Sunny refuses to enter certain places in his house, specifically the piano room where Mari would spend hours practicing, and his own backyard where Mari committed suicide. Criterion D is most notably presented through Sunny's inability to recall the traumatizing event. While we may be shown fragments of that memory, the player isn't able to come up with a solid conclusion. There have been other videos on this topic that have theorized that Sunny would better fall under different psychological conditions, mainly dissociative amnesia or dissociative identity disorder. When it comes to dissociative amnesia, a major point is missed. While dissociative amnesia is classified as its own dissociative disorder, dissociative amnesia is also a symptom of PTSD, and in some cases are both diagnosed. While Sunny would certainly fall under the criteria for dissociative amnesia due to Sunny's inability to recall his trauma, dissociative amnesia does not explain Sunny's avoidance of certain places and people, nor the presence of something. In the context of the game, it would make more sense for Sunny to experience PTSD with dissociative amnesia as a comorbid condition. Another theory that players have suggested is that Sunny could possibly suffer from dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder. The main argument for this theory is that Omori serves as an alternate identity to Sunny. This theory could support Sunny's inability to recall his trauma, as people who suffer from DID tend to experience amnesia due to switching to alternate identities, in this case, Omori. But this disorder has only been assigned due to theories surrounding Omori's role and function within the game. But the game doesn't provide enough sufficient evidence to fit Sunny under DID. One of the main issues about this theory is that amnesia is quite prevalent in DID. as information that was remembered by one alternate identity may be entirely lost once a switch happens. But bouts of amnesia are not shown throughout the 3-day span that Omori takes place. The only way that this theory would make sense is if Omori was in fact an alternate identity to Sunny, but that doesn't seem to be the case. But if Omori isn't an alternate identity, then what is he? Omori is the main playable character within Headspace, a perfect world where Mari is still alive and everything is the way it once was. At least, everything was perfect until Basil found that photo, almost revealing the truth of what happened to Mari, to Omori, and in turn, Sunny. It can be assumed that Sunny remembers what happens in these dreams, as visions of the Headspace characters will sometimes bleed into the real world. The next time we enter Headspace, Basil is nowhere to be found, as if he was erased from the dream. It's later revealed that this world has been reset multiple times to cover up this truth. No matter how many times the path is concealed, the Flower Boy will always find it, and your dear sister Mari, she will always guide you to it. Even as hollow shells, they will continue to evolve, and each time, they will grow wings and fly too close to the sun. It is their nature. They are the only ones who know, and one has carried it with her to her grave. The game directly references the story of Icarus, where he used wings made of wax and feathers to escape an evil king. But Icarus didn't heed his father's warnings and flew too close to the sun, melting the wax and causing him to fall into the sea. An allegory for overreaching one's own limits, much like how Basil will always find the truth, and for this, is erased from Headspace each time by Omori, falling to the deepest depths of Sunny's mind. This form, though it has not shown its true self, is evil. You will not see that unless you fight it. Omori is the true antagonist of the game, whose only goal is to protect Sunny from the truth behind his trauma. Omori originally was created by Sunny to escape from the real world and his trauma, but as Headspace was reset more and more, Omori would change along with Headspace, growing more autonomous each time until, eventually, Omori would grow much more powerful than Sunny ever intended him to be. In Black Space, Stranger asks Omori, "Why must you take that cursed form? It is indeed strong and can protect you, but if you rely on it too often, what you will sacrifice can never be reclaimed." Instead of protecting Sunny, Omori is the gatekeeper to Sunny's past, repressing Sunny's memories so that he may never learn the truth. Omori is now the symbol of the years of memory repression and unhealthy coping mechanisms, the face of the suicidal depression and guilt that has consumed Sunny over the past 4 years, far from what he was supposed to be when he was first birthed in Whitespace. The shadow personifies everything that the subject refuses to acknowledge about himself, and represents a tight passage, a narrow door, whose painful constriction no one is spared who goes down to the deep well, wrote Carl Jung in his book, Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious. Omori is Sunny's shadow, and to defeat it, Sunny must face the worst and most evil part of himself. Headspace's topography seems to follow that of Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory and the human conscious. As the group's search for Basil nears its end, they find themselves in Deeper Well, the deepest level of Headspace. To go any lower would lead to the disorganized and inconsistent realm of Sunny's unconscious. Deeper Well is the border between Sunny's conscious and his unconscious, the preconscious, where aspects of Sunny's repressed memories may bleed through into Headspace. Things that are disturbing to someone's conscious are often buried in the unconscious to prevent one from troubling themselves, a concept known as memory repression. As Sunny attempts to redeem himself and remember his trauma, it leads him to explore his own unconscious, Black Space, a realm filled with incomprehensible rooms of Sunny's past memories and trauma. Distorted beyond comprehension. In some of these rooms, Omori finds Basil, but because of Basil's connections to the truth, and Omori beginning to lose control over Sunny's memories, he kills Basil, over and over and over again. Even when Basil is begging for help, the player is unable to stop Omori, who has achieved full autonomy from Sunny. While Omori wishes to suppress the truth and keep Sunny in a state of torturous ignorance, Sunny wishes to allow this truth to be revealed, and eventually,
overcome his trauma. The conflict between the will to deny horrible events and the will to proclaim them aloud is a central dialectic of psychological trauma, wrote Professor Judith Lewis Herman in her book, Trauma and Recovery. And over the course of the game, Sonny makes tangible progress to finally overcome the overwhelming fear and guilt that's consumed him for the past 4 years. Something. In each fight with something, Sonny is unable to physically harm it, as something isn't a physical being, but rather a manifestation of Sonny's fears and trauma. In order to overcome his fears, Sonny has to remember different methods of coping: calm down, focus, and persist. During the penultimate fight with something, Sonny uses each of the coping mechanisms that he learns from his previous encounters with something. During the fight, Sonny calms down by taking a deep breath, recovering some damage. When something changes shape, Sonny focuses, allowing him to begin seeing something's true form. And when something deals a lethal blow to Sonny, he persists, not allowing himself to give up. All of which are methods to deal with stressful situations, especially deep breathing, which tells the sympathetic nervous system, the network of nerves that manages your fight or flight response, that everything is okay. But confronting one's own trauma head-on is extremely difficult and emotionally draining. Your lungs tighten up, persist. Your heart beats out of your chest, persist. Your fingers won't stop trembling, persist. Despite all of this, Sonny continues to persist until you gather all your courage and learn to overcome. With Sonny finally overcoming something, he now has the strength to face the truth behind his trauma. Redemption is hidden among one of these doors, but it will never open for you in that form. You will have to find another way in. Once Sonny defeats something, he's finally able to enter black space as himself, opening the door to redemption. Basil says, the truth of that day will be hard to accept. When you see it, you have to stay strong. Through his own distorted memories, Sonny forces himself to remember the truth behind his trauma. The truth behind Mari's death. Collecting photos from Basil's point of view and sorting them into his photo album. The anticipation is overwhelming, knowing that the path forward only reveals the suppressed horrors of Sonny. A truth so horrific, it had to be locked away forever. The game makes the player feel how Sonny would be in this very moment. Stress, fear, sadness, shock, and guilt. With each photo collected, leading closer and closer and closer to the truth. The anticipation kills you until it all comes to a head. Mari didn't commit suicide. You killed her. Prior to the events of the game, Mari would spend a lot of time playing on the piano, and she would also take up extra prep classes for college. In an effort to spend more time with his sister, Sonny would take up the violin, and they would practice together often to prepare for an upcoming recital. But Mari's perfectionism and constant scoffing at Sonny's mistakes would cause Sonny to grow angry. On the day of the recital, Mari and Sonny were arguing at the top of the stairs. Sonny would throw his violin down, destroying it. He tried to walk away, but Mari stepped in front of him. Losing all control, Sonny pushed Mari, and she fell, most likely dying before she even hit the floor. Why was Basil over to see the events that unfolded? We don't know, but he saw it. At this point, Sonny, overwhelmed with emotion and shock, begins to disassociate, lifting Mari back to their room and placing her on the bed. Everything appears dark. The shadows slither around you. You don't understand what is happening. Your head starts to feel fuzzy. You sink into a crevice in your mind, an empty, white room. Basil, who watched Sonny push Mari, thought that Sonny couldn't be responsible for the accident, instead blaming it on something behind him. He follows Sonny up to the room and tells him, "Don't worry, everything is going to be okay." Basil comes up with the idea to stage Mari's death as a suicide. Sonny, being completely disconnected, agrees. They both take her body out to the backyard, where Basil would create a noose from a jump rope and hang her body from a tree. Basil grabs Sonny and starts to lead him back into the house. Suddenly, Basil stops. You look up at his eyes, but this time, they're wide awake, staring at something. You turn your eyes toward it as well, though you wish you didn't. An eye meets yours. Your heart sinks into your stomach. You shouldn't have looked back. You just shouldn't have looked. After learning the full truth, Sunny immediately wakes up and the player is given a choice. Save Basil from the torment that comes from bearing the truth, or go back to sleep, leading Basil to ultimately commit suicide, and Sunny to either move away, unable to redeem himself with something still behind him, or leading Sunny to commit suicide as well. If Sunny chooses to save Basil, he finds that Basil is having a psychotic breakdown, wishing to commit suicide to escape something. When Basil sees Sunny something, Sunny is forced into a fight with Basil, who tries to kill something behind Sunny. The pressure of the situation disallows Sunny to use any of his coping skills, forcing him to fight Basil. As the fight nears its end, Basil stabs Sunny in the eye with garden shears. They both black out from their injuries and are both rushed to the hospital.
Recovery can take place only within the context of relationships. It cannot occur in isolation, wrote Judith Lewis Herman. Even though Sunny was struggling with his guilt for 4 years, he was never able to open the door to redemption and recovery. But with each passing day, as Sunny reconnected with more of his friends, he grew stronger. Strong enough to overcome the barrier that was disallowing him to remember the truth, finally leading him down the path of redemption. The very start of this path was saving Basil from committing suicide, and the next will be remembering what Sunny wants to protect, the precious memories of his friends, currently tainted and distorted for all of them due to the lies surrounding Mari's death. Basil says that he wishes to tell Sunny that everything is okay and that they both have no choice but to carry on. But in the end, it's Sunny's choice on what he does with this truth. Aubrey, Kel, and Hero are good friends. You have to trust that they'll forgive us. But before being able to seek forgiveness and move on, one must forgive themselves first. If not, they'll never move forward. Sunny imagines his house how it was 4 years ago, completely furnished, unlike his empty house in the present. Mari can be heard playing piano in the other room. When spoken to, she gives Sunny one last word. We all make mistakes. You've been running from this one for a long time now. It's tough to own up to them sometimes, but you'll forgive yourself, won't you? Following Mari's final wish, Sunny seeks to forgive himself, entering the closet, a room that the player could never go in before, to retrieve the broken violin, the same violin that was broken over 4 years ago, locked away in a toy box so as to never disturb Sunny again. As long as you keep secrets and suppress information, you are fundamentally at war with yourself. The critical issue is allowing yourself to know what you know. That takes an enormous amount of courage, wrote Bessel A. van der Kolk in his book, The Body Keeps the Score. Sunny uses this newfound courage to remember what is truly most important to him, his friends, and the memories that are shared between them. They may be a little sad now, but he knows he should be happy that they happened at all. The overall theme of friendship is shown throughout the entire game. It is made very clear that Sunny holds his friends extremely close in his heart, but because of his trauma, Sunny finds it hard to confront his friends at all. People inflicted with psychological trauma often experience an elevated sense of danger, breaking down the person's ability to trust even those closest to them. In Sunny's case, the fear that his friends will never forgive him and abandon him. This is even revealed at the start of the game, where it is stated that Omori doesn't like to be alone. But Sunny's friends continue to swear to stick by each other, as leaving each other alone was a mistake. It's this that gives Sunny hope. The hope that his friends have the capacity to forgive him for the accident that took place. It's his friends that gave Sunny the strength to not only remember the truth, but to take accountability for his own actions. When Sunny builds the courage to remember all of the positive memories of his friends, the violin begins to mend itself back together. Whatever happens next is going to be your call, but we're here for you because you want us to be. And we really hope that this isn't goodbye. Though the path to redemption lies open, Sunny must overcome one final barrier that's held him down all these years. After playing his part of the duet that he was supposed to play with Mari, Sunny breaks down and finds himself in whitespace, coming face to face with the final barrier that he must overcome, Omori. The embodiment of Sunny's self-hatred versus Sunny's perseverance and will to continue. Friendship plays a big part in this fight, as it's the words and memories of Sunny's friends that give him strength and allow him to come back stronger. When Omori takes lethal damage, he does not succumb, as the negative thoughts towards oneself cannot be dealt with physically, eventually telling us that Omori will not succumb. Your friends will never forgive you. They'll abandon you like you did them, and that's what you deserve. Omori uses Sunny's own self-hatred against him, attempting to make Sunny give up. But he continues to persist. When do you think about others? How long are you gonna let people take care of you? You say you care, but you're a liar. You've never done anything for anyone else. You're useless. Less than useless. You're sick. People like you don't deserve to live. Sunny's guilt and self-hate wants him to remain under the constant protection of Omori, no matter what the cost may be, even if it drives Sunny to suicide. You're nothing but a liar, and when they see the truth, they'll hate you as much as you hate yourself. If they know the truth, you'll never be able to regain their trust. No matter what you do, it will be hopeless. All you'll do is make things worse. It would be better to just die. As Sunny gets stronger, Omori gets stronger. Persistence is the only way to beat him, and giving up is not an option. Giving up only means death. You killed Mari. She loved you, and you killed her. Hiro, Aubrey, Kel, and Basil, they all loved her, and you killed her. You loved her, and you killed her. You should just die. Sunny, under constant pressure from his most evil thoughts, is defeated. And the game asks us, the player, one last question. Do you want to continue? Not in the sense of restarting the fight and loading your previous save, but does Sunny wish to continue trying? Does he want to continue living? One last time, the game makes the player persist, and then overcome. Sunny's self-torment finally comes to an end when Sunny uses his imagination and his memories to heal instead of protect. The game never actually shows the group's reaction to the truth. Taking accountability doesn't guarantee forgiveness. It's about accepting one's own faults, whether or not others decide to be forgiving. It's about accepting that every one of us, including ourselves, has the capability of making such mistakes. As the player, we spent so much time emotionally invested in this group that we're presented with the question of whether we would forgive Sunny or not. No matter what we do, we cannot change the past. Things may never go back to the way they once were, but through our own actions, we can positively change the future. With the truth off his chest, both Sonny and Basil can finally heal.